man, what a week it's been. Actually, past few weeks. So, anyway, as a lot of you guys knew, I just got back as you know, just got back from Europe. Went over there to do a bunch of training and stuff. Do some schooling, work with some guys on tuning. We talked about exhaust over there, things like that. Also, another purpose of my trip was to meet with quite a few manufacturers of parts that are only available in the European market. And actually some quite incredible stuff. So here in the very near future, I'm going to be coming back to you guys with several things. We're working with some guys to develop some suspension components, brake components, front ends, things like that. So we're pretty excited about all that. It's pretty cool stuff. Very high end, very nice, good cream of the crop type stuff. Let's see what else is going on. Oh, you may have seen a post that I put up a few days ago about all of our new builds for the M8s. We've got several different price levels and performance options. You can see the dyno sheet. We did the comparisons there. And hey, Mike, thanks for dialing in, bud. And you'll see the comparisons on the M8 build. So, you know, anywhere from 115 foot-pounds, 150 plus foot-pounds. So we can get kind of crazy with the M8 stuff. And we've got one more level that's going to be absolutely outrageous, not for the faint of heart, on a custom build for the M8s. I haven't made the announcement yet. Still got a little bit more development to do, but we're working on that. So pretty excited about that deal. So as usual, we start out with our, I think everybody knows now what's probably in this cup. Congratulations to our contest winners. We had 3 guys that nailed it with either a spiced rum. One person mentioned Captain Morgan and Coke. Gene Slater at Clockworks was actually the guy that nailed the Captain and Coke. Of course, I've seen Gene at quite a few shows, so he had a small advantage, but he remembered anyway, so that was pretty cool. Gene's a great guy, by the way. I've known him for quite a number of years. So congrats to the guys that got 3 t-shirts on that. They should have received those, so thanks for playing the game. We're going to do that every now and then and see what we can put together. So we're going to have another sip of our Captain and Coke, and it's 501. And we're going to get started on exhaust dynamics. Now, as we do everything, guys, actually, let me do an audio check real quick. Can I get a thumbs up? Are we coming in good? Video, audio good? Before I start rambling, you guys know how I am, man. I've been clocked at 350 words a minute with occasional bursts of 475. So once I get going, I tend to not stop. If you've ever come to any of my seminars at V-Twin Expo and various other places where I do the training classes. So get a thumbs up. Let's see if anybody's giving a thumbs up on that. Bad video. Well, let's see. I've got a good Wi-Fi connection. Unless you're referring to my face. It should come in clear, or it should dial in. I've got everything on Wi-Fi, so we should dial in. So, anyway, thanks, Matt. Appreciate you, bud. All right, so let's talk about exhaust. We're going to talk about laws and warranties, how it refers to doing exhaust modifications on your bike that's still under factory warranty. And then we're going to touch on tuning as well. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, it's on a bit of a delay. As you ask questions, I can see it on the screen, but it's quite a bit of a delay. So when we close and we're done with this, as you're asking questions, if I happen to miss one of your questions, if you would do me a favor and repeat that again and give me a second to sift through and scroll through these things and read them all. So so let's get started. Oh, and the last thing, as always, you guys know, when I do these tech talks, I'm not a brand basher. I actually prefer not to talk about brands whatsoever. When I show you some of the different exhaust samples that I have here, you're going to instantly recognize the brand, but I'm not going to mention their name. I do that for various different reasons. A lot of that has to do with there are a lot of companies in this industry that make fantastic pipes. And a responsible engine builder and a knowledgeable shop should be able to recommend a pipe for you, honestly, regardless of brand. As long as it's a quality pipe and it performs and it meets your goals, you should have the option to choose from any of the brands. Okay, so and most of the manufacturers out there have exhausts in different categories. There are some that have absolutely horrible exhausts. I'd never bolt them on. If you ever called me and bought exhaust from me, or we ever did performance work on your bike, I would tell you the truth about the brands, but I choose not to do it publicly, and I hope you guys can understand and respect that. So anyway, so let's start with exhaust modifications. Awesome, Larry, thank you. The common question that you get, especially if a bike is still under factory warranty, is, will changing the exhaust void my warranty? When you go into a lot of OE dealers, they will tell you that if you do not bolt on their factory exhaust or their what's in their catalog, that it will void your warranty. Pay attention to the nomenclature on that, okay? They will say it will void your warranty, and if you flip through that manufacturer's catalog, you'll see the asterisks with the footnotes on the bottom of the page that say this product will not void your warranty. Fact of the matter, guys, that is semantics. Back in the mid-70s, the Magnuson-Moss Act was put into place. It's still in place today. There are several things involved with the Magnuson-Moss Act, one of which, if, say, for example, on services or brands of oil, brands of filters, as an owner, you have the option of having your motorcycle, car, serviced anywhere you want to have it serviced, provided they are knowledgeable and can prove their salt, if you will, that they understand what they're doing, that they're a qualified mechanic. Okay, you have the option of getting that done anywhere. You have the option of running any brand of oil you so choose, provided it meets the specifications, the manufacturer specs, and the owner's manual for weight, viscosity, and all that type of stuff. The exception to that, as part of the Magnuson-Moss Act, is that if a manufacturer requires you to run a particular brand of oil or have it serviced at a particular place, they have to provide that service for free of charge during the warranty period. So you'll know a lot of European car manufacturers, like Volvo, I think, used to do it. I'm not sure if they still do it, but Volvo, Mercedes, BMW, a lot of the high-end stuff, they advertise that they provide their services free of charge during the warranty period. That's so they can require you to go back to the dealership. Now, you're paying for that in the price of the vehicle, of course, but that's their way of staying, I would say, staying good with the Magnuson-Moss Act and following all the rules. Okay, so that's just one aspect of it. Now, on the second side of that would be for vehicle modifications. It is technically illegal for a manufacturer to void your warranty unless there is a substantial modification that would could potentially directly affect safety. For example, converting a Harley to a trike. If there's a frame modification, then that can, yes, void your warranty because there are substantial differences from one to the other. Okay, so that's one of the big reasons Harley came out with trikes. All right, they saw the market, they saw the need, they filled the gap. Now a person has an option to buy a trike, and then you can't go the void warranty route. The same exact thing applies with exhaust. Okay, when they put the nomenclature in the catalog with the asterisks, and exactly, Scott, I get that question all the time. With exhaust, particularly when it says on the bottom with that asterisk and it says this will not void your warranty, that is true. They can't void your warranty for putting on a set of slip-on mufflers. Okay, let me say that again. They cannot void your warranty for any reason. What they can do is deny the claim if the manufacturer can prove, pay very close attention to this, the burden of proof is on the manufacturer. The manufacturer has to prove that your modification caused the defect. Okay, that's very important. Now, typically, if people are just putting on slip-on mufflers, that's referred to as a catback system. So if you want to hit Google catback systems warranties, what you're going to find everywhere is that it should not have any effect and would not have an effect on your warranty at all, provided it is from the catalytic converter back. Okay, the reason for that is from the catalytic converter forward, you have factory O2 sensors, you haven't modified those, you haven't modified anything else going on in there, so a catback system would have no effect on your factory warranty. The same exact thing applies in the automotive world. So there's a ton of websites that have great articles on this stuff, but if you want to know the ins and outs of it, Google Magnuson-Moss Act, and then you're going to find it. Again, that nomenclature, this won't void your warranty, it can't. They can't void your warranty. All right? Where it comes down to is when you make those exhaust modifications, again, the burden of proof is on the manufacturer. They have to prove the modification caused the problem, right? So with that being said, what you have to do as a consumer, and unfortunately that can be tough to do, and I'll get to how you can make that easier, you have to make sure that the person that installed your exhaust and did the tuning is qualified and tuned the bike so well that it would not create an issue, that it would basically be impossible for the factory to say, yes, there's a problem. So let me give you an example. Let's say that we're working on a twin cam. Well, twin cams are all out of warranties now, so let's talk about M8s. M8s are notorious for dropping valve seats. Valve seats are already moving and spinning around quite a bit. So that's already a known issue. But let's say you have a full exhaust system installed and you melt down a piston and things like that. Understand the manufacturer has to prove that the modification created the defect, and that's very, very difficult for them to do. So as long as you choose a shop, choose a reputable tuner, someone that really knows what they're doing, then you should not have any issues at all. So don't go into buying an exhaust system for a new bike that's under warranty thinking you're immediately going to void your warranty. If someone tells you that, it's not true. Okay? So you just have to make sure you choose the right shop that knows what they're doing. So how do you know the difference? Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it. You love my smiling face. I love Brandon. He's been a customer of mine for a very long time. Brandon and his bride are great folks, great folks. So anyway, you just have to make sure that the shop that knows what they're doing. So if I'm going to touch on tuning a little bit since we're kind of on the subject. Captain and Coke. All right. I get asked the question all the time, how do you know if the tune is good? Basically, if you wanted a general overview, an engine in these motorcycles anyway, you should see somewhere around 38 to 42 miles to a gallon. That's a pretty good average. Okay, you should be able to pull the dipstick and smell it. If the dipstick smells like fuel, the bike is running too rich. Okay, the next thing you can do is pull the spark plugs. You can look at the center porcelain on the plug. You can look at the ground electrode. And quite honestly, this is going to sound bizarre and unbelievable, but the fact is with nearly 20 years of tuning fuel-injected cars, motorcycles, nitrous, boosted, and everything else, I can get within roughly about a half a tenth on an AFR throughout the entire RPM range by reading a spark plug. So, if you look at your spark plugs and you understand how those work, I know Scott Fitzgerald is watching. I actually did a tuning class at Scott's place. Scott is the V-Rod extraordinaire in the U.S., by the way. Fitzgerald Motorsports, if you own a V-Rod, check him out. So we went through the spark plug thing there at Scott's, and I think if he pops in a comment here, he'll agree that it was quite enlightening. And then when we compared what we visually saw on the spark plugs to the actual AFRs that we spooled up on his dyno, we were within a couple of tenths. It's pretty amazing. So that being said, if you take a look at your spark plugs, your fuel economy is 38 to 42 miles to a gallon. The fuel doesn't smell like oil, or no, rewind. The oil doesn't smell like fuel. Too much Captain Morgan in that Coke. If the oil doesn't smell like fuel, then as a general rule, you have a pretty good tune there. If you're getting 30 to 32 miles to a gallon, you're tuned way too rich. If you're getting 45 to 50, you're probably, take a drink, thanks Scott. If you're getting 45 to 50 miles to a gallon, more than likely you're running too lean. Another quick idea for something that you can check. Let me see if I can find it on my workbench here. I normally keep it on my workbench here in the machine shop. I don't have it directly in front of me, but for about 30 bucks, you can go to your local parts store and you can get an infrared temperature gun. A lot of people have those. If you hit these right next to the spark plug, all right, just behind the base of the spark plug, right on top of the head, you should see an average around 300 to 330 degrees for cylinder head temperature there at that area. I found that to be a really good gauge. You can also check the front and rear cylinder and compare the two and see what, and kind of get an idea of what the power contribution is between the front and rear cylinder to kind of check your tune. The idea with that is if any of you have ever been involved in aviation and you've ever worked with air-cooled engines, Cessnas, things like that, you would know that the #1 gauge that these guys are looking at short of altitude is cylinder head temperature. Basically what happens is you have, an aluminum cylinder head with either ductile iron, mollies, etc., different types of, there's all kind of different metals. For the valve seats, they expand at different rates. You can drop a valve seat if the head gets too hot. Hey Deb, how you doing, hon? Good to see you. And they can start dropping valve seats. Cylinder head temperature is very important. So if you're wanting to know tuning on that end of it, cylinder head temperature is a good gauge, fuel mileage is a good gauge, and what does the oil smell like? All right, so that's a good way to know. So at this stage, we've covered the warranty stuff. Can I get some feedback from you guys on that? Comment, thumbs up. Are there any questions on how warranties can be affected? The bottom line is, again, you can easily install slip-on mufflers without it affecting your warranty. There's no reason for it. They may tell you different, but remember the burden of proof lies on the manufacturer. They have to prove that the modification created the defect. So if you install slip-ons to say you voided your warranty if you blow a transmission out of the thing, they have to fix your transmission. And quite frankly, if you're working with a dealer and they don't run their mouth to the factory in most cases would not know the difference anyway, and they should take care of their customers and fix the bike. So, I mean, let's be honest, it's billable hours for them anyway. It's an extra job. So, and hopefully, having a really good dealer on your behalf is great. We are actually an extended warranty authorized extended warranty center as well. We deal with the warranty companies all the time. We don't lie to them. We're not dishonest with them, but we make reasonable decisions on the benefit and behalf of the customer when it comes to those modifications and such. So Scott there, he's Scott Fitzgerald. He's tells customers all the time V-Rods what he's doing. I'm not sure if you guys can see the comments or not. Thanks for popping in, Clay and Mark Brady. And Tony. I'm gonna back up for just a second. Mark, we just finished one of our Skunk Works projects on his Indian, and he gets to pick that up on Saturday. We're very excited for him. I wrote it today. The weather's gorgeous here in good old-fashioned Winder, Georgia. It's about 70, 75 degrees, so we went out and had some fun on that bike today. She runs great on our Indian build. So anyway, any questions on anything as far as warranties, warranty application is concerned? Okay, cool. Thanks, Brandon. Where warranty applications are concerned, or Catback systems, or anything like that. I don't think we have any questions. Okay, so let's talk about exhaust dynamics a bit. Again, we're not going to get into brands. And actually, I'm glad Brandon has joined us because he will be able to preach how much a muffler will make a difference in a build. We went through a round robin with Brandon quite a while back on a bike that we did for him, and so he may be able to chime in on that. Scott, what is a Catback system? That's basically a modification that you make beyond the catalytic converter. So if you're dealing with a Harley with where your catalytic converter is built into the head pipe, if you put a slip-on muffler on, that is technically a Catback system. So you've made the modification from there backwards. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And then on, there's one exception on that, like on the Scouts, the Indian Scouts, the catalytic converter is actually built into the muffler. So what you guys do, I'm going to be flat out honest with you. If you have exhaust installed, you have mufflers installed and modified, keep your stock ones. It's as simple as that. Okay. We can get into tuning systems and touch on that in a little bit in a minute. But let's get into some exhaust stuff and let's talk about dynamics. All right? Thumbs up, everybody. We're good? Let's have another sip of Captain and Coke. How's everybody's weather, by the way? We went from like 25, 30 degrees, and it was, again, 70 degrees today. So, not too bad down south. Hey, Rich, the Skunk Master. Rich Edmondson was the one that originally referred to us as Skunk Works quite some time ago. And we adopted his idea and decided to run with it. Of course, in honor of the of all of our guys in the aviation industry, and the work that was done up there in Marietta, Georgia at Lockheed Martin and SR-71s and all those wonderful things. Actually, my dad worked for Lockheed Martin for quite some time. He was involved with the C-5B project quite a number of years ago and was still at Lockheed Martin when they released, I'm trying to remember what aircraft that was. Wow, I can't remember what fighter plane that was. But he was involved with Lockheed Martin at the time, so it was a little bit of aviation history in the family there. Anyway, so let's talk exhaust dynamics. First thing, 62 raining cats and dogs in Greenville, Ohio. I'm surprised it's not snowing in Greenville, Ohio. If I remember right, it rained except for the one day Scott took me for one of the best breweries I think I've ever been to when we were up there. That was a fantastic, fantastic trip. An engine is a huge air pump, right? It is a set of lungs, if you will. So we have to remember we have a lot of things happening. Let me stop for a second. I'm watching comments, so you guys bear with me. I apologize. Deal with the pipes I had. Kevin said a swap will eliminate the problem. I was thinking BS, that the exhaust completely cleared up the problem before Kevin retuned it. That's exactly right. If you guys flip and read the comment that Brandon just made, I'll tell you a little bit more about his. Basically, we built one of our Skunk Works engines at the time, and we used an exhaust system. I'm not going to mention brands at this point. I'm going to show you one here in a second, and you'll probably recognize it. But we used the exhaust that he had on his bike currently, and I didn't feel it. He didn't feel it either. The low-end torque that's supposed to be in our builds just frankly wasn't there. So then we tried a mild modification, and it didn't work either. It basically choked it down like you were dragging an anchor. And then we slid another brand of pipe onto it, and it was like flipping a light switch. And we did that each step along the way without tuning the bike from one step to the other, and let Brandon ride it in each step along the way so that he could see for himself how much of a difference it made. And as you can see from his comment, it made a substantial difference. So it's very important that the builder understand the things that I'm about to tell you, that they truly understand exhaust dynamics, and they can answer your questions. One of the common thing is, how do you know if someone's recommending the right thing? What I encourage people to do is ask questions over and over and over again, and progressively. Why this? Why that? Why that? And you should be getting very good answers when you ask those questions. Research those questions, and I don't mean from, I'm not going to say it. Make sure that you're getting your secondary information, your second opinion, from very reliable, knowledgeable sources, okay? And if you ask questions enough, you'll find one answer that is, well, that's just what we do. You may find another answer that it worked for this one, but there is always an answer to the right question, okay? there's a right answer to the question. You just have to find it, right? So Larry asked, on a 117 build, stock decatted head pipe into open slip-ons versus an aftermarket 2-to-1-to-2 and same slip-ons worth the $500. I'm glad you asked that, Larry. I'm actually going to touch on that exact thing here in just a couple of minutes when we start talking about exhaust dynamics. And Debbie, 47 degrees, blue skies. She just recently moved to Vegas, Henderson, Nevada, if I remember correctly. Henderson is a beautiful, beautiful place. Ben Kudon just jumped in. I'm going to stop for a second and tell you guys who Ben is. Ben has about 150 years in the motorcycle industry. Ben was young when dirt was new. Actually, I think he was in his mid-30s when dirt was new. Ben is a wealth of knowledge. He's had his fingers in just about everything in this industry. He's a great, trusted friend. Have a lot of respect for Ben. And he is also the owner of American Prime Manufacturing. American Prime Manufacturing has all sorts of parts that they're constantly adding every single day. And we are a 100% backer of American Prime Manufacturing clutches. Hands down, best clutches in the business. So thanks for hopping in, Ben. We appreciate that. You've got to make sure when you're dealing with someone and you're talking about these exhaust systems that they understand and they can answer your questions. Every person we do an engine build for asks me that question, what exhaust should I run? This is the answer I give everyone. And if any one of you, I've ever done an engine build for you, there's quite a number of you, thumbs up it if you've heard me say it. I say it the same every time. We buy these motorcycles largely in part because we like the look and the sound of it. Okay, that's a big part of what we have. Now, there's a small percentage of this motorcycle wonderful market that we have that people are concerned with the absolute maximum peak dyno number. That's fine if you're that person. But you spend a minuscule amount of time at 6,000 RPM during your ownership period of the motorcycle. So a large part of your satisfaction when you make the modifications is, do you enjoy the sound and do you enjoy the look of that bike? Now, when we're making engine modifications, understand we could be doing something as simple as a cam that may add 10 to 15% to horsepower and torque, but we could also be doing a massive build that could add 50% or even double the factory horsepower and torque. So it's relative. You know, if you roll out of here with a bike that's you know, stock bikes making 80 horsepower, 90, 95 foot-pounds of torque, and we're doing a build for you that you're going to end up with 115, 120 horse, 130, 140 foot-pounds of torque. That is a substantial increase. So in reality, if you're giving up a few on the dyno, you spend such a little amount of time there, you know, at 6,000 RPM, what does it really matter? Okay, so as an owner, I would encourage you guys to really think about ignoring a dyno sheet to a large degree, because you forget about that dyno sheet when it comes down to enjoying the sound of the bike when you and your passenger on the back are cruising at 80 down the interstate for 6 hours and you're not having the hum in your ear and all that sort of thing. Or, you know, some people like duals, some people like 2-in-1s on baggers. You know, it's a very different look. So think about that first, okay? And you know, the peak dyno number, again, you're there that long and you spend the rest of your time roll on throttle. Most people ride between 2,000 and 4,500 RPM with an aggressive shift. In reality, it's 2,000 to 3,500 RPM is where most people ride. So a responsible engine builder should be recommending exhaust to you that is going to fit your riding style, where you ride, and your passenger, your weight, the type of build, and all those sorts of things. So that's another part of it. Rich, yeah, we did a set of, we decatted Rich's head pipes, did an air intake, we did some tuning on it, and that was on a trike, and it made quite a bit of difference. I'm going to touch on that for a second, guys, and I'm really sorry I'm jumping around a little bit, but most of the time when you put a Catback system on, you just slide a muffler behind the catalytic converter, you really don't have to do a lot of tuning. However, the bikes come out of the factory with an EPA compliant tune. Do you have to tune it with just putting a slip-on muffler on it? No. But if you're spending a lot of money on exhaust you might as well spend a few hundred more bucks, get the bike tuned. It's going to run cooler, it's going to run better, and it's going to have more power, period. But I will tell you, here is where the number one mistake that I have seen time and time again, please write this down. I see guys taking catalytic converter head pipes and doing massive tuning to the bike, adding a tremendous amount of fuel. Let me explain how catalytic converters work. Platinum, that's one of the biggest components in a catalytic converter. The way catalytic converters work is they take the heat. When you add fuel to it, it burns incredibly hot to burn off the excessive fuel and the exhaust gases. Okay, remember that. That's how they work. That's what they're designed to do. So if you are doing a tune on a bike with a catalytic converter and you're trying to tune it to the same AFR values that you would if it did not have a catalytic converter, that pipe will run hotter than it would otherwise, because you're tuning the values, running richer fuel mixtures, pumping more fuel through the exhaust. The catalytic converter is going to get hotter, excessively hotter, to try to burn that extra fuel off. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second and let everybody thumbs up on that. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so if you have a catalytic converter head pipe and you're just putting a slip-on muffler on it with a tuner that truly understands what's going on, then you will have better performance, because we can adjust ignition timing, we can trim the fuel down just a little bit in the higher RPM ranges, but we still want to maintain close to factory AFR if you're keeping your catalytic converter in place, because we don't want to burn up the catalytic converter and make it hotter. Hope everybody gets that. I've done talks on that in countless countries all over the planet, Europe, Japan, China, everything else. Talk for hours about tuning with catalytic converters. That's a very interesting topic in itself. But my goal is to give you guys knowledge so you can ask the questions. Let's have another drink. So, are we on topic? Everybody good? I'm going to pause for a second. Any questions at all? Brandon mentioned, never saw a dyno sheet on my build. The truth is, in every twist of the throttle. Yes, sir, it is. When you stretch forks in third gear, carry the front end in second, and skyward in first, yeah, the truth is in the throttle, my friend. Any questions? Okay, we're doing good. All right, so let's back up just a little bit. An engine is a huge air pump, okay? In simplistic terms, let's ignore combustion for a minute, and let's just talk about air, all right? From an engineering perspective, air and fluid dynamics kind of intertwine with each other. Okay, so if the easiest comparison I can think of, two things. Imagine a garden hose with a nozzle. Okay, we put the small tapered nozzles on, you get an enormous amount of velocity and an enormous amount of pressure increase, but not as much volume. You can put a very large nozzle on a hose, get an enormous amount of volume, but you get no velocity and you get no pressure. Okay, hope that everybody understands that. So if you've ever walked into a restaurant, for example, and you look up at the ceiling and you see the HVAC systems, if anyone's involved with HVAC, you will understand what I'm about to tell you. You'll notice when you have your air handler unit on one side, and you'll notice, depending on the number of vents and the number of outlets and turns, you'll notice that those pipes, they get smaller and smaller and smaller as you go out. And the reason they do that is so you can maintain a smooth a volume and velocity and pressure throughout the entire AC system. It balances the AC system, so you don't have, a vent barely working in one spot and one blowing like crazy in the other. So that's part of HVAC engineering. Engines work exactly the same way. So when you make modifications and you're putting in bigger cams, for example, you're changing how that air pump works in and out. So on your throat, on your lungs, right? You have these valves opening and closing, and it's controlling how the air enters and exits your system. And an engine is doing the same thing with the valves, right? Plus you have pistons coming down that are pulling in a volume of air. All right, then you have the inertia of that incoming air coming into the cylinder, and that's still pulling in when the valves are open. Then the valves close, and it compresses that air, right, and it spits it out the back. So when you change cams, you're modifying how that airflow works. You're modifying the inertia of the incoming air. The term is called cylinder fill. The idea is to pack as much air into a cylinder as possible. If you can pack more air into a cylinder, then you can give it a little bit more fuel and make a more violent, when you have combustion propagation, you have a more violent combustion event, and that's how you make power. That's how boosted engines work. You're cramming air and fuel into the cylinder, building up that pressure. Okay, so what you have is you have cam modifications. You've maybe changed pistons. We've increased compression ratios. We've increased displacements. We've increased stroke, piston sizes. All of these things are changing the shapes. When you change displacement, you're changing the size of the lungs. When you're changing cams, you're changing how that air is handled, how that airflow comes in and how it exits. When you change throttle bodies, when you change air cleaners, all of that affects how the air is handled on the front end. Okay, now during all of those combustion processes, we're making these pressures, we're changing the volumes of those airs, of the air that's in there. What you do on the front end has to match what you're doing on the back end. That's where the exhaust comes in, and that's where it's critically important. That's why I don't recommend one particular brand or style of exhaust. It is solely dependent on several things. The look and the sound that the customer's looking for, the goal that we're trying to achieve. If it's maximizing power, maximizing comfort, maximizing roll-on throttle response in that operating range of 2,000 to 3,000, 3,500 RPM, all of those things will change what I would recommend as far as an exhaust. There should not be a de facto standard. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if there's a shop that you're working with that always recommends this brand of exhaust every single time, then it might be a good idea for them to expand on their offerings based off of what you guys are looking for. So here we have this big air pump. There's all kind of different modifications, and us being builders that do the custom tailored suit aspect of engine design, as anyone will tell you that has ever had me do an engine or a modification for them, we sit down and we have a talk. I want to find out what the future plans are, what they're doing now, what their goals are to, well, one, to try to keep people from spending money twice, but two, what I do on the front end has to match the back end. So I need to make sure that what we're doing on the front end with that big air pump is going to match the exhaust that we're putting on the back end. On the other side of it, if people already have exhaust installed on the bike, typically I will recommend that people leave the exhaust that they have on it unless it's a horrible exhaust system, and invite them just to ride the bike for a little while. If they're not happy with the performance of it, then you can make modifications that will help them achieve their goal better. When you're making such a dramatic thanks, Ben. Appreciate you jumping in, my friend. When you make such a dramatic power output increase, sometimes it's a frame of reference issue, right? So if a person, most people can't feel 5 horsepower and 5 torque. All right, so are you willing to give up 5 horse and torque and in exchange for the dual exhaust that you love to a 2-in-1 that's going to get you that power back? Okay, so that's a question as an owner you have to ask yourself, but a builder should be responsible. So we have this big air pump. So another common issue I see is people putting in enormous throttle bodies on builds that don't require it. I'm seeing 62 millimeter throttle bodies on 107-inch engine builds. It is absolutely not necessary. So what happens on the front end is that you're slowing your port velocity down quite a bit. You're reducing the effective volume of the air that's coming in. You're reducing that cylinder fill. You're slowing that port velocity down. And when you reduce that cylinder fill, you're reducing the engine's ability to fill the cylinder at lower piston speeds, which means you give up your lower low to mid-range RPM torque values. And I've taken countless bikes, even bikes as big as 120 cubic inch, where a guy wanted low to mid-range torque and it comes in with a 62 millimeter throttle body. I'll go back to a 50 millimeter throttle body, and miraculously he has the low to mid-range torque that he's looking for. He may give up 5 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, but who cares? How often do you ride there? But again, it depends on the goal of the customer. All of that being said, everybody good? Okay, guys, sorry about that. I don't know. Our internet connection's working fine here at the shop, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but I do remember where we left off. So what I'm going to do when... okay, perfect. We're back. Sorry, guys. I have no idea what happened. We're showing good on this end. I will take these two videos and combine the two together and put them back on Facebook. These get posted anyway, so hopefully we won't lose too many people on the interruption and they'll hop back in. So trying to recall exactly where we left off. I think I had asked if there was any questions on air pump exhaust dynamics and what's going on. Basically, it's moving in several different directions, right? So you have reversion, you have scavenging. That's what I stopped on. You have reversion, scavenging, and then sound control. Sound control is a no-brainer. Okay, we understand what that is. Reversion is what occurs when you have valve overlap, the exhaust valve is open, at the same time the piston is coming down. That's why more aggressive cams you have a more difficult time tuning very aggressive cams, is because typically the cams have more overlap. A responsible builder would choose the right cam, but that's a whole different conversation. So when you have that overlap, you have more reversion. And what happens is you actually suck fresh air into the exhaust system. Then you have an exhaust pulse and it moves back out. Then it comes back in and it moves back out. And what we hear is this potato, potato, potato. We're not hearing 1,000 pops a minute, right? So what we're hearing is that exhaust going, and then it gets moved back and forth and back and forth. Okay, so we're controlling that. That creates false lean conditions. It sucks fresh air into the cylinder, leans the fuel mixture out, creates issues. The next thing is scavenging. We want to be able to remove all the spent gases from the combustion chamber. So an exhaust needs to scavenge everything well, maintain pressure, maintain flow. All right? And then, of course, you have the exhaust control. So choosing the right exhaust would be based on cam profile, desired power range, and all that sort of stuff. Again, reversion, scavenging, sound control. Now, let's look at a couple of things real quick because I know we're running out of time. I like to keep these close to about an hour or so. First thing we're going to see is this. Some of you may recognize this. This is a baffle out of this brand of exhaust. Y'all know who it is. You'll notice this baffle design is straight. It's basically a see-through baffle. The reason this works so well is you can add discs and control the airflow. With this, you can control the input and output of this exhaust. All right, so I would say this would be a terrible design if it wasn't for this section here that allows you to control those things. Plus, the way these plates are made, it controls that reversion wave and it changes that. Okay, so this is a great option. Some people love the sound of these, some people hate the sound, but it is what it is. That's one example. Another example, I don't know if Brandon has hopped back on with us or not. I'm going to see if I can show you this. This muffler here. Some of you may recognize this. I am not going to mention the brand. All right, but what I want to show you, and I'm going to see if I can put a light in the end of it. Let's see how I can do this. Can you guys see that? Yeah, okay, there we go. All right, notice it's basically just a perforated piece of metal that's in there. All right, perforated metal. Now, let's look at a third exhaust brand. Now this, again, when I show you this, you're going to recognize it. This is not the only brand that builds baffles this way, but it is an awesome example. Now, let's look at this one. Whew, that LED is bright. Let's see if we can see this one. All right, can you guys see that? Yeah, I think that's coming through good. Look at the baffle design. All right, so let me explain the difference between the two. Remember, we need to control a reversion wave. All right, we have that air coming in. What we want to do is create turbulence. We want to churn that air up. We want to try to build up some pressure, if you will, to give the exhaust pulses time to catch up, to scavenge all of the exhaust, but also build up that pressure so that you're not getting that big gulp of fresh air. Okay, and that cheese grater design, that real heavy louver design with that spiral pattern is an awesome way to break up that reversion wave. The last one that I showed you is an exhaust system that I would definitely recommend. The one that I showed you that was in the middle, it's essentially a straight pipe. A tremendous amount of reversion occurs in that pipe. So what happens is you lose your pressure, then, and you also, the biggest thing is because you're getting so much reversion, you have to tune the bike exceptionally rich because you're getting that big gulp of fresh air. So you have to tune it very rich. When you do that, you lose performance. Your oil starts to smell like gas. Remember, we talked about that. Your fuel economy comes down. You're diluting the oil mixture and reducing the life of the engine. I hope all of that makes sense. Now, this other one that I'm showing you, this one would be an exception. All right, because again, you can modify this. You can change this. That's some of the differences. It's a good general overview on exhaust. Now, I want to go back to what Larry asked. Larry asked about different muffler, decatting stock head pipe, and that sort of thing. Okay, it really depends. I hate to say it, it depends on the big picture. A lot of times what happens is when you look at a factory head pipe and you decat it, the chamber that the catalytic converter in is this big oval area, and it's about that long. All right, so when we remove the catalytic converter, we create a big area of dead air space. Okay, it depends on the build, it depends on the profile, and I have to be honest, I get surprised sometimes. The reality is we see, like on Indians, for example, and a lot of the victory builds that we do, in many cases we see the absolute best performance by decatting a stock head pipe and putting a really good slip-on muffler on it. Okay, but when you look at the chamber design, when you remove the catalytic converter from a factory Indian head pipe, you're almost making it a 2-to-1. So I can understand how that would work. But again, it really depends on the build, how much overlap you have in the cam, and all of these other things. It all matters, right? So anyway, so in the end, what you want is an exhaust system that is going to control reversion, that is going to promote scavenging, have the sound and the look that you want, and it be done in such a way that the bike can be tuned that it has a 38 to 42 miles to a gallon on average. Okay, now you're running 85 miles an hour down the interstate, you're going to get a little worse, right? Because a lot of load on the engine. Regardless, on an average riding day, see between 38 to 42 miles to a gallon. After a couple thousand miles, you pull your dipstick. It should not smell like fuel. The spark plug center core should be, the porcelain should be nice and clean. And that's kind of a good overview. And your cylinder head temperature shouldn't be through the roof. They shouldn't be 380, 400 plus degrees like we see on poorly tuned or stock Harleys. That's a good way to know. So I'm going to say that, guys, that pretty much is exhaust dynamics without getting super, super crazy. We've talked about warranty stuff, the importance of choosing the right exhaust, how exhaust systems work. And I will touch on one thing, the debate over 2-in-1s versus dual exhaust. Okay, there's some dual exhaust systems that perform pretty well. As a general rule, I'll go ahead and throw it out there. As a general rule, yes, 2-in-1s produce higher dyno numbers than true duals do. How much is solely based on the build itself. But we have to remember, do you like the look and the sound? How much time do you spend at 6,000 RPM? And who really cares what a peak dyno number is when you're riding the thing on the street every single day with your better half on the back, full of luggage? What really matters? What really matters is the area under the torque curve. When you look at the torque curve on a dyno sheet, we want the most area under the torque curve as we can possibly get. The more area you have under the torque curve without changing the mass on the motorcycle, the weight, you will effectively improve the average rate of acceleration. It will make the bike faster. Average area under the torque curve. Choosing the right exhaust that you like the look and the sound of, that will provide a healthy tune for the bike to ensure the longevity and give you the most area under the torque curve is the right exhaust system to choose. So, I think I'm done with my rant. What do you guys think? Do we have any questions at all? Hopefully this has been informative. If you guys don't mind, as we do these tech talks, I'm not sure sometimes if I talk too fast, if I'm giving way in for more information than you guys want to know, or what you really want to do. I mean, I'm doing this for you guys. Educated consumers are great, because when we do business, it's awesome for you guys to come in and kind of understand the frame of reference that we're coming from when we make recommendations. So if everybody's in good shape and you guys give me a thumbs up We know we're on the right track with these things. If you guys have any ideas at all on what you would like to cover next, thank you very much, Rich. Thanks for hopping in, Big John. I'll be posting these up. You can review all this stuff. It's probably a lot of information that you would want to see. What we could do, we could get a little more detailed in tuning. Tuning's a good subject. I think we might dive into engine modifications. Just touch on things. You know, cams, compression ratios. I don't want to get too crazy with valve sizes and stuff. That's a. You know what? I'll answer this question real quick. Do I need an exhaust bigger than a D&D? I am a fan of D&D exhaust. They do make good exhaust systems, provided it's the right exhaust for the build. They have certain characteristics that I would want to discuss with somebody privately. That I'm not a big fan of, but they definitely make some power. They have a sound that's unique of their own, but there's trade-offs sometimes. Rich, engine mods, Robbie, cams, chain drive versus gear drive. I think that's probably a good thing for us to do. Let's on the next one, let's start maybe diving into, and I hate using the word stage upgrades, so we'll look at stage 1, stage 3, stage 47, whatever stage we need to talk about. Maybe we do an episode on engine upgrades and then work our way into some big engine blueprinting, boosted 300 plus horsepower kind of crazy stuff. So all right, guys, awesome. Again, thank you very much for watching. If you don't mind, do me a favor, share this video, share our Facebook page. I also post these videos up on our YouTube channel. We have a great YouTube channel with hundreds of videos on it that talk about tuning and stuff like that. So share it and tell folks. And quite frankly, I'd love for you to help us build this business. We've got great customers already, and we'd love to have more of you. And let's see what else. PCVCX versus PCV. Let's do that on the next one, Nate. I think that's a great chat. And then we'll hop in on next time. So, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to have another Captain and Coke. Again, thank you so much for your support. Thanks for following us. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments under this video. After a day or so, I will go through and answer any of your questions, and we can move on from there. Guys, thank you so much. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. We hope it's not snowing where you are. And if it is, go ride a snowmobile. Thanks. Take care, everybody.